All right, you guys all ready to rock and roll today? You ready, Dallas? You ready, David?
Yes,
Yes.
sir.
All right,
Let's do
so
it.
I'm excited to have this going on. We've been getting a lot of calls lately about what tenants have to do. Property managers are calling, which is great. And we have the backups to support all that infrastructure, but it's these answers that you're going to get at this webinar today are going to make your life a lot easier. If you are a current landlord, a tenant, or even a property manager, this is really some of the things that you're going to be needing about. So, David, I'd like to address there. You see Dave, he's going to be going off the camera here momentarily. If you have any questions, just go ahead and shoot those questions within the chat. Is that the best? Just put it in the chat or something like that? Okay.
Yes.
Or you can send it to him directly, whatever. We likely will not get to all the questions, maybe not even any of them, because it's we're going to be tight on the timeline, but you'll have our contact information at the end, and we will certainly get back to you if you had anything. So let's go ahead and get started, and let's talk about radon testing and mitigation that meets the requirements of Montgomery County, Maryland, and the rental properties. So first, I've learned, I've done webinars, I've done so much of this stuff for so long that I always remember that if you're in a webinar, sometimes people just feel like you must know what you're talking about because you're on a webinar, right? But we certainly do have some credentials to go with that. And I'm going to speak a little bit about top to bottom specifically, and then Dallas, maybe you can do yours. No one can sing your fanfare better than yourself. But top to bottom, I'm the founder of Top to Bottom and current president, and we have a great chief director of operations for us, Chris Enders. But Top to Bottom Services has been A+ rated by the Better Business Bureau for 19 consecutive years. We started in 04. So at the September of this coming will be 2 solid decades. And we right in Montgomery County, which is why I'm really excited about being on here with Dallas and his representation of Ecosense, because it is state-of-the-art technology, and we are right here in this house. So we know what we're talking about in Montgomery County, but we do all outside of Montgomery, surrounding counties, the District of District of Columbia, Northern Virginia, and West Virginia. And you can see right here, we have tons of reviews, probably about 5,000 total 5 stars against everything. And for you property managers, we do have a 24/7 scheduling portal online. You can go ahead and schedule on there. And most importantly, we do all of our radon technicians have Sentry Lock access. So we can use the combo that you want to provide us, or we can use Sentry Lock. So been around a long time, kind of gray, but that comes with wisdom. So Dallas, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get started.
All right. Thanks, Dan. I actually joined Ecosense just a little over a year ago, about a year and a half ago, after retiring as executive director of the American Association of Radon Scientists and Technologists. We also managed the National Radon Proficiency Program. But after leaving there, I joined the team at Ecosense because I'm so impressed with the technology and the products and services that we offer. Ecosense was founded in 2019 and is actually a Silicon Valley startup headquartered in San Jose, California. We sell radon monitors and services in the United States as well as Canada and throughout Europe. We've got a phenomenal radon sensor technology that's patented in the U.S. and our sensor just provides unparalleled radon detection performance. We've got a sensitivity of 30 counts per hour per picocurie per liter, and that may not mean anything to you, but just suffice it to say that when we're reporting numbers, not only the average concentration, but the individual hourly readings that we collect during the sampling period, you can count on those numbers to be accurate and precise. We're also the company that launched the first consumer device that is capable of producing real-time radon monitoring in the fashion that I just mentioned. The sensor in our consumer units is just as good as in our professional units, which is about 15 times better than the minimum allowed by the ANSI ARST radon standards. We've won a CES Innovation Award and a Time Best Invention Award in 2021. So I'm real proud of what we're doing. and we're here to work with Dan and top to bottom to help take care of your needs in Montgomery County.
Great. Thanks a lot, Dallas. So here's the story. As I think everyone that's watching this right now are primarily in Montgomery County, but you probably have units outside Montgomery County. So there's a saying within Montgomery County, what happens in this county cascades to other county, right? So if it's happening in Montgomery County, Frederick County, Prince George's County, it's going to be coming there too. So let's just be focused on Montgomery, but be thinking bigger applications because it's coming, right? So in July of this year, the new code came into effect stating that now if you are a landlord, you are responsible for making sure that the facility that the people are living in, let it be a single family home, a multi-family apartment, right? Condominiums, that they have all been tested. Now, we've gotten calls saying, who has to pay, and we're going to go through all those scenarios, but just to be clear right now, it's the landlord's full responsibility for the testing, the conducting of the testing, and being provided, giving the information to the tenant. And that means if they're doing it, that means they got to deal with the scheduling of it. That's why I said it's great to have Century Lock. But more importantly, they got to dole out the money, right? So they want to use equipment that's not going to give them false positives. And that's why we've aligned ourselves with Ecosense, because we knew we had to save everybody money. We didn't want to do retesting that was costly to both top to bottom and also to our tenants. So we had to have a great piece of equipment, and that's why we're going with these guys. But I will tell you, the landlord is responsible for the cost. The landlord must also provide the tenant with a certificate stating that these test values of the radon are below the EPA recommended picocuries, which is, a lot of people have already heard that is the 4.0 picocuries. So in here you can see, if someone is coming in, the landlord has to go ahead and say, you're coming into my space. They are responsible for the testing. So the tenant moves in, there should be getting a notification saying this has been tested and this has been approved and you are below 4.0 picocuries. Now, the great thing about this is that we don't have much time to speak about it, but the radon levels do fluctuate. So with this equipment, we can leave it in there for an extended period of time and get a good pace of what those levels are to get our average of our 4.0. So they have to be below that 4.0 in the picocuries on this particular setup. Now, looking at your tenant rights, right? So then they come back and they say, okay, well, what if I'm renting a property? Shoot, some of you people that are watching right now actually might fall into this, right? So let's just go through this. And if you want to take any photos as we're going through here, please do so. But you can also message David or even call us and we can send you a copy of this. But tenants do have rights, right, during this time, right? So obviously they can test, they can request the test, right? They can ensure that the test is below the 4.0 picocuries, right? If they don't do it, the tenant has the right to terminate the lease. So I just want to make sure you heard it. They have the right to terminate the lease. So it takes a long time to get somebody in the space. Why would I want to take the chance of losing them, right? So they can get out and say, hey, listen, it's too high. I want out of there, and I'm going to go ahead and get my security, and there is no penalty. So that's huge, right? Tenants must notify the landlord in writing within 14 days and provide him a copy of the test report. So the tenant comes in and says, hey, I want to go ahead and do this. I want to run this test. And I go and I get the test and I show it to the tenant, to the landlord. And now they have 14 days to go ahead and respond to however they're going to take that action. Now the landlord now must follow up with the test in accordance to the EPA standards. And why do we have this as two different bullet points? Well, the tenant could go somewhere and buy a very inexpensive, inaccurate system, okay? And it could be even a charcoal canister that they buy at one of the big box stores, which is that's a tragic situation. So now let's just say the tenant tests. Well, now the landlord could have us come back in using the Ecosense equipment and actually get a better reading on it. And it is possible that our tests will come up lower than theirs. So you got to be aware of that, right? Within 90 days, 90 days, write that one down. 90 days after confirmation of test, the landlord must mitigate the premises to reduce the radon levels. So they got to put in a system. Now, if you have a property in Frederick, a lot of these properties are already being put in with a passive system. Well, they're gonna need to now put something in within 90 days of this, and sometimes this could be a challenge. So you got to get great tests. You don't want false positives. So reducing those expenses is important. Let's talk a little bit about now what if you have the landlord fails to mitigate. The tenant may terminate the lease. We talked about that a little while ago. They can walk away without losing their security deposits. We had a landlord say, well, I'll just keep their money and then at least they'll give me some time to get my new tenant in there. No, buzzer, that does not work that way. So they can walk away at no problem. They don't have to all they got to do is show the fact that that number is off. So if they're exercising this option, the tenant must provide the landlord a written note of their intent to terminate or vacate it. So they come back and they test and they say, hey, you're too high, I'm out of here. If the landlord is not wise enough to have a good system come in from top to bottom or Ecosense, they could be losing a tenant from a false positive test. Now, notice that by effective either immediately upon receipt by the landlord, he or she must agree upon that both parties to allow the tenant time to find alternative housing. Now that opens up a whole nother can of worms, right? Because now the tenant is leaving, they're going to get their security deposit back. There's going to be no penalty. But now I also, as a landlord, I got to give these people enough time to find another spot. And that's going to be a conversation, Dallas, that I don't think we're really going to even have. And I'm sorry, I was really on a roll there, Dallas. I took your slide from you. So I don't know if I missed anything there. If you want to take over from here, I apologize.
No, you covered it all. You got it. I want to say that if what you're looking at here is a something that's really important when you're executing a new lease or even renewing an old one, the landlord is responsible for providing this radon lease agreement.
Yeah.
And securing the tenant's initials that they've been provided a copy of the radon results for the unit they're leasing, that the test was performed within the last 3 years, and that they received a copy of the EPA Citizens Guide to Radon. So all three of those things have to be accomplished as part of the role of being the landlord. Now, the bottom half of this document spells out the existing tenant's rights and requires the landlord to obtain the tenant's signature acknowledging that they have read and understand the notice.
Now, Dallas, I just have a question that always pops up over here, and if you could just go into a little bit, that 3-year thing, that means that they can take if they have a test from top to bottom with the Ecosense, now the landlord is protected because they have their number.
Right.
It's below are we interpreting that correctly? I just want to make sure everyone realizes that that's important. Can you just drive that in?
Yeah. So if you have a test report that's no more than 3 years old, then when you have a tenant move in or you're renewing their lease, if you provide them a test report that demonstrates that, with the results that are below the EPA action level of 4 picocuries per liter, then you're compliant with the regulation as long as that result is within the last 3-year period. Once 3 years have lapsed, then you have to test again. So if the date on that gets beyond that 3-year period, then you're going to need to have another current test result to provide your clients from that point forward for that particular unit.
And we hold on to those, and I know that the test results are really easy to read that are produced through Ecosense, and we hold on to that. So all you would have to do is call us up and give us the address again, and we can generate another report if they lost that report. Did I miss anything? Because you've been doing this for so long on those other slides. I was so anxious. Did I miss anything that we wanted to go back?
You covered it perfectly. I think you got it all, Dan.
Okay. Perfect. Well, why don't we go into some of these frequently asked questions because, and I appreciated, Dale, you actually working with us on putting these together because these are the questions we get asked most of the time, either in an email form or text form, or they just call us. So if you want copies of this slide, we can reach out to us. We'll do that. But let's look at this first one, Dallas. Can we just order the test kit and do it on our own? And I kind of alluded to this, but can you expand on that a little bit?
Well, the real thing to pay attention there is who is the we that we're referring to in this question.
Mhm.
So an existing tenant may conduct a radon test on their own, or they can hire a professional. Okay, but a landlord must hire a licensed radon professional or a certified radon professional to conduct the radon test. So a tenant can do their own test. They can order a test kit from the county. They can do it any way they choose to do it. But the landlord would then be responsible for doing a professional test to confirm it, and then act on the results if need be, or show the tenant that the results are indeed less than the action level.
Yeah, and to that point, like the second one right here, people say, well, if the landlord does it, can they just go and get their own test? And some will do that, right? Some will do it, and they'll get the test results and they'll come back at 2 point something. But if the tenant moves in, like we talked about earlier, the tenant moves in and they're required now to show them that shows it below. And if they find out that was not performed, that test was not performed by a licensed radon professional that complies with the EPA's recommended testing standards, it's invalid. So now the landlord has already paid now one that he went or she went to Home Depot or wherever, got it, paid for that one, waited for those results, and now they're getting double dipped because they got to still call us anyway. So the third one, if the tenant wants to have it tested, then it's on their expense. Now this is within that 3-year window also. So if the landlord can prove that Ecosense and top to bottom already tested it, well, the tenant can go and do as many times as they want. The landlord is still protected. Am I correct on that?
Yes, and
we're
keep in
definitely
mind
protected.
keep in mind that if you have a tenant that's already in a lease at this point in time, then you're not responsible as a landlord for doing a test until that lease comes up for renewal or you lease that unit to another tenant. However, the tenant can do a test next week, and if they determine from their test result that the radon is elevated, then they can come to you as the landlord and say, our test result shows that there's a problem here and we want it fixed. And so at that point, as the landlord, you would be responsible for doing a test to either confirm or dispute their test. So you could be really proactive and go ahead and get units tested, or as soon as you have an opportunity, or you can wait until just before you need to renew a lease or you're going to lease it again. But know that tenant can present you with test results anytime they choose.
Awesome. Thank you on that one. Thanks for doing that. Let's go ahead and hit the next slide here about this. Now, here's one that we see as home inspection companies quite a lot, not just in what we're trying to do to help out Montgomery County and the people that are watching this webinar right now, but this is just, we get this all the time, right? So even this on a resell, like someone just selling a house to it, and they say, oh, it's got a system in there. Well, hey, Dallas, correct me if I'm wrong. Radon, you can't see it, you can't taste it, you can't smell it, you can't touch it, you can't do any of that, right? So, but by far, it's the second leading cause of lung cancer in the United States. It's a fact. That's not a made up number. So if you can't touch it, feel it, sell it, anything, just because you have a system in there, there's no way to tell that the system's actually working. It's not like radon had a smell and you walked in and now you got a system and now it doesn't smell. It's like you just don't know. You have to test. right? So if you are going in there and you're managing a property and the property already has a system, that's great. You got one step ahead, but it still doesn't prove it's actually working or not. I can look at my car right now parked outside and go, that's a good running car. And someone says, well, you haven't even turned it over yet. How do you know it runs? Right. So it's like you got to test for it. So the landlord must provide that prospective tenant with a copy. So tell your landlord, yeah, you already had that installed last year, and that's great. You did that. Sorry, but you didn't get a test by a licensed certified professional with the 3-year on it. So you got to have top to bottom come out here and do another test. And that the results indicate the radon concentration is below the recommended level, then you're good. If it comes in high, you need to have to call back the mitigation company and say, what you put in is not working, right? So Dallas, we're talking about here, what if the test results of a unit that already has a mitigation system installed? I kind of talked about it, but I don't think people really get it. They keep saying, I have a system. So if they have one, what's the answer down here on this frequently asked question?
Well, to be clear, one more time, the landlord must hire a licensed radon professional to
They
repair
can't do it themselves.
the existing mitigation system and bring it below 4 in the event that it gets tested and you determine that the mitigation system is not doing the job. One of the things to mention here, Dan, is the EPA and even the Maryland Health Department recommends that a home with a mitigation system be retested at least every 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So the fact that the regulation in Montgomery County is giving you that 3-year window is certainly a little advantage for you as a landlord. But yes, there's no way to verify that the mitigation system is doing its job unless you're either continually monitoring it, which a tenant could do with a consumer continuous monitor, and that's certainly something they can get. But if not, then it's going to have to be in Montgomery County at least retested every 3 years.
Yep. And Lord knows that becomes complicated when you're managing massive numbers of apartments and things like that. So thanks for driving that home. And right now we're at 25 minutes after the hour. I know that we have this audience for 30 minutes, so we'll try to get through these last couple slides here. So how may I dispute between a tenant and a landlord's test results be resolved? So we've had this conflict before where we have a test result here and a test result here. And the bottom line is this: the line in the sand is boom. Is one of these tests done by a professional, and is one done by a non-professional test result? So you might have to actually find out when you read the lab and see if, oh, this was sent out to maybe like a pro lab or something like that. A lot of these big box stores, you send it off there. If it's done by top to bottom services, it's going to have our credentials, our name right on the report with Ecosense, so they're going to know. So if you have to determine the validity of the test results, and that's the best one. And then also it has to be a long-term professional test, which supersedes the short-term tests. Dallas, that right there, I think needs your expertise just to kind of, I know it, but I think you might be able to say it better. The difference between the long-term test and the short-term test.
Well, again, the key word in both of those is that it's a professional test. So it's certainly what the point they're making is that a professional test is going to supersede a non-professional test, a test done by the tenant themselves. And that's number one. But then once you get into the fact that it's a professional test, if it's a short-term test, say 48 to 96 hours, that's a great test, and that's typically what's done. But if a professional performed a 90-day test, which is certainly something that you could choose as the landlord, then that result, because it's over a longer period, would supersede the results of a professional short-term test. Does that
And
make
that's
sense?
because obviously you have a lot better opportunity to collect more data points,
Sure.
addressing fluctuations, because we know radon levels do spike, rainy days, cool days versus a sunny day and warm. Obviously, the rainy and the cold days are gonna have more concentration, and we can have a whole nother another webinar on the best ways to test and where to put equipment, but we're really just focusing on the Montgomery County stuff right here. So in a situation where those both remain, and we find out that the landlord hired top to bottom and the tenant hired somebody else that was also a professional licensed person, obviously the dispute still remains, and then you would have to have a third party. Very infrequently would that ever happen. I would find that extraordinarily rare. In fact, that might only happen when I see a unicorn running through my backyard. But if it does happen, you just have to get a third test there. So all right, we're bringing it in here for the end here on this one. So how are we going to wrap this up?
Well,
I tell you.
So now that you understand the responsibilities of landlords and the rights of the tenants and the requirements for radon testing in Montgomery County rental properties, we're just here to tell you one more time that Ecosense and top to bottom services have partnered to provide you with a comprehensive radon solution to landlords and property managers like all of you. Ecosense provides the most accurate and reliable radon test devices in the world, and top to bottom services have been providing quality professional radon services in Montgomery County for nearly 20 years.
Yeah.
That's a combination that's a win-win for you as a landlord and a property manager. So we want to make sure that we're available to serve your needs.
Yep, that's a dream team right there, quite honestly. Now I did get the one question that popped through there. I saw you flash up. We only have a little bit of time to actually answer this question, and it was Dallas. Maybe I'll just go to you on this one because it's not fair. I'm reading that I have the question in front of me. What happens because Dan had mentioned inclement weather. What happens during the test with Ecosense's equipment if the landlord is testing something and it's a heavy rain day for a couple of days? How is that addressed?
Well, the weather situation, according to the standard, is that tests of less than 4 days in duration should not be performed under unusually severe weather, unusually severe storms or high winds in excess of 30 miles an hour. So, rain in and of itself, a couple of days of rain, it is considered, normal weather. Some days it's rainy, some days it's sunny, some days it's in between. That's just, normal, radon situation, and really isn't going to have much of an impact on the radon concentrations. But when you get into severe weather where the barometer is rapidly falling, let's say there's one of the hurricanes coming up the Atlantic coast from the Atlantic, and you just see the barometer falling and falling as it moves further north, then that could cause a spike in the radon concentration that could be a problem. And so averaged into a short-term test could cause it to be abnormally high for that period. So at that point, the test would be invalidated because of that weather. But that's again, it's unusually severe storms or high winds in excess of 30 miles an hour.
And then and what we've done in the past with the Ecosense equipment also helps with this is we can extend it. We don't have to go grab the equipment and say, hey, we got to lay it back out. We can just run back over, leave it where it's positioned, and just extend the test, right?
Yeah. So if you left it for 96 hours, then you've got enough time where the impact of a weather spike isn't going to be averaged in, or isn't going to affect the average to the point that it would cause it to be elevated just from that.
Perfect. And the last one was how do we contact you? And I think the slide right before this was had our phone number on there. If you just want to go one back, Dallas, you can just reach us out to us at 301-938-9100, or you can actually find us online at TTB, that's top to bottom, TTB services, that's plural.com. Dallas, thank you so much. I'm super excited that meeting your team years ago in California and bringing it now in time for this is exactly what Montgomery County needed. So thank you for taking the time to co-host this with me. It was really a lot of fun. I hope everyone enjoyed it.
My pleasure.